Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie, and I believe that all readers should read children's literature, especially adults. So that's what we do on the Kid Lit Love podcast. We celebrate all things children's literature, picture books, early readers, middle grade, and young adult novels too. Whether you're an adult reading to your inner child or connecting the young readers in your lives with fantastic books, you've come to the right place. Each week, we'll talk to a different children's literature author and discuss their books, their hopes and dreams for readers, their writing process, and much, much more. So, grab a notebook to build your TBR, and let's get to today's episode of Kid Lit Love. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Kid Lit Love podcast. Today, we've got James Preller here as our special guest, who is no stranger to children's literature and Kid Lit Love. You might recognize some of your favorites like the Jigsaw Jones series, the Big Ideas Gang, Scary Tales, more recently, probably Byspander, and my favorite, which I don't know if I've ever told him what my favorite is, but the Courage Test so far is still my favorite. I loved it, including he's also written some newer books for us that we'll talk about today in the new Exit 13 series. So James Preller, welcome to the podcast.
Stephanie, thank you so much for having me. It's nice to see you again and hear your voice again and be a part of this. So thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm excited to. You've written a lot of books.
Yeah.
A lot of books that appeal to, I would say, a wide range of readers, as I've mentioned some of the smattering of titles in the introduction. Can you give us a bit of your backstory behind all of those books? The how, the when, the why, like
Yeah.
how'd
Well,
you come to write so much?
I never got the branding memo. There's, I don't know if you're aware of it, but branding is like a big thing these days, and you're supposed to be on brand, and everything you do supports that idea. And that is so not the way I've run my career. I may explain some of the hiccups along the way. But, it's funny because people ask me, like, what are you reading? What are you reading lately? And I'm like, or what do you like to read? And I bounce around. I've always been, I have a wide range of interests, and I read nonfiction, and then I read, the 3 hot novels, and then I have to read something about baseball every year. And then, and then sci-fi is cool, and mystery is cool, and police pursuit. So I bounce around and just kind of follow my instincts and follow my enthusiasms. And unfortunately or fortunately, I think that's kind of how I've taken my writing career. Is I love picture books. I admire picture books. I love mysteries and scary stories, and just the full range. So I keep expressing that. And one of the things that happened for me with an editor who's been important to me in my career, Liz Sabla, is I did my first hardcover book with Bywell and Friends, which is with Macmillan, and I wrote 6 Innings. And 6 Innings was, an important book for me, and it was ALA notable. But I thought, oh no, now she's going to want a soccer book, or now she's going to, I'm going to be the
Right.
sports guy, and someone's going to put me in a box, and if I have a personality trait, it's like, don't box me, and nobody puts baby in a corner.
Favorite movie, love that.
So like, yeah, so Liz, to her credit, was just like, no, we want you to write whatever. We don't want you to be just the sports guy. We want to, we want to see what's inside you, and whatever you're enthusiastic about. And then I wrote Bystander after that, and I bounced around, and sometimes I'd go off into the corners and no one seems to care, and other times I, aim for something a little bit more mainstream, and here I am. No one knows who I am.
That is not true. That is not true.
Yeah.
There are many kids, this is kind of making unknown connections. I can think of so many kids. I could still see their faces. I could probably recall some of their names who became readers because of Jigsaw Jones and those early chapter books. I can remember their faces, you know, when I would hand it to them in our groups. So I think you have a lot of readers who are appreciative that you are not in a box, because you have so many different books that are entry points for so many different kinds of readers and kids.
Right. Well, thank you. And I want to get back to answering your original question. But yeah, what's nice about having a range is like if I do a school visit or something, I actually can sit there and go, yeah, I wrote something for kindergarten kids and eighth graders and everything in between. So I was a English major in college. I went to Oneonta. It was a state college. That was my introduction to upstate. I'm a Long Island boy. I've blocked it all out. I don't have any memories of Long Island, but I've been upstate for a while now. But so I was an English major, so of course, and I began to have the dream of being a writer, and I loved poetry and all that stuff. So I got a job at Beefsteak Charlie's as a waiter, all the beer, wine, and sangria you can drink. And so I did that for about a year and thought, okay, I need. And anyway, I moved to New York, I moved to Brooklyn, and I got a job as a junior copywriter for a publisher for $11,500 a year, 1985, and the job was with Scholastic Publishers.
Yeah.
And at that point, children's books were really not at all on my radar. And even as a kid, I don't really have a huge memory of children's books. But I worked on the Seesaw Book Club, and I began to see these picture books and really, very quickly grow to respect that art craft and the potential of doing really good and meaningful work within children's books. So that was kind of my eureka thing. The next year I published a picture book called Max Trax Avalanche Rescue about superpowered trucks. I did some what we call like freelancers call like down and dirty work, pay the mortgage work. So I did some novelizations of The Fox and the Hound and other things. And then I started writing Jigsaw Jones in, I think, 97. So there's 42 Jigsaw Jones books that have been published. And it's like there's something like 11 million copies out there. But when you think about, and Jigsaw's, I think he's post-peak, certainly. But I've been at so many schools where there's the bin, the little James Preller bin or a little mystery bin.
Yes.
And when you think of like that's one copy in a second grade classroom, but how many eyeballs and how many people have, sneezed in those pages, just the germs alone is, mind-boggling. But it's just incredible. So Jigsaw's, he feels. So I love Jigsaw, and I'm very proud of those books.
Yeah.
So, and then, gradually I just started writing, having other opportunities to do different kinds of books. Yeah. But Jigsaw was sort of, I think part of it, like starting with Scholastic, the book clubs where you'd see book sales, you'd promote the books. My job was to write about the books in a way that would entice you to buy them. And then we'd get the numbers and the sales numbers, and you'd see what kids responded to, what they bought, what they didn't buy. So I always feel like I have that. I was trained in a kind of a commercial atmosphere where I understood, even though that I'm the guy who wants to just go off in a cave and write poems that no one reads. So that was a nice balance of like doing things that that would readers actually wanted to read and pick up. So I had a sense of that. So I've always sort of balanced those two impulses, that kind of commercial mainstream idea with sort of writing the book that I wanted to write, maybe. Yeah. And those two things didn't always coincide.
Oh, so what happens when they don't coincide? Do you abandon the idea? Do you write it in a secret drawer somewhere or save it and it comes out in a new form later?
um, well, the old Hollywood, in the old days of Hollywood, where they where they owned, they had a contract with the director. So like they would have a contract with the director who did westerns, and they'd go, okay, MGM, you can do this western, and after 3 or 4 westerns, they'd always say, all right, go ahead, write your, do your stupid art movie that doesn't make any money, that's fine, and they'd let them have their personal movie. And I kind of look at it a little bit like that. Sometimes I've written books where I really kind of have a sense, okay, this is not going to be a big seller. I don't tell that to my editors.
Right, right.
They probably know. They probably have their own suspicions. But you just have a sense that something's going to be more popular than something else. Although the market always surprises you. But I think I'm very idealistic and romantic about the arts still, even so I'm probably not the best advisor for another writer, but I really do believe in um, going with your heart, going with what speaks to you, telling the story that you need to tell. And in terms of how the world receives what I do, um, I don't control that, and I've kind of been able to let that go to some extent. It's sort of like you were a blogger. I've blogged since 2008. I've had I think the longest running blog on the internet, and nobody cares. I mean, people don't read blogs anymore. I don't even look at my numbers
Right.
anymore. I do it just for me. There's a satisfaction in articulating something or putting something out in the world. And it's not that no one cares. Someone's out there and someone's reading it. But I think I would do it anyway.
Yeah.
It's just in my nature.
Yeah. That's the beauty of it, right? When you do it anyway because you love it, and then the people who also love it just find you
Yeah.
somehow. And the people that don't, well, that's okay too.
Yeah. What are we going to do?
Do you have a favorite? Is it like picking your favorite child, to ask if you have a favorite book or was your favorite project, or does one
Yeah.
come up?
Um, One of my real pet peeves, the thing that always annoys me to no end, is when writers say, my books are like my children, blah, blah, blah. And guess what? I have 3 real living children, and they are nothing at all like my books. I mean, they're not like children at all. They're projects. And so, I've come to be having a range of books, like I've kind of come to think that I try to make each book the best it can be for what it is and recognizing what it is. So, I have like a scary tale story about a doll that's an evil doll or something. And I'm trying to write, those are sort of in the old like high-low concept, where I wanted to make it really super accessible on terms of reading level, but the artwork is a little sophisticated, so an older reader could read it, have a really positive experience finishing a book, and not have the stigma of walking around with a baby book.
Yeah.
So, do those books express everything that is, me and in my heart and soul? No, but there are very few books that can really even attempt to do that. So I try to make each thing the best it can be. I don't know if that makes sense, but like, you know, I stay in the lane, and this is what it is. And if I'm writing a Jigsaw Jones mystery, I'm aware of who I'm writing it for,
Right.
what I'm trying to accomplish, and that's it. In terms of favorite books, I mean, another thing that's funny that I struggle with is that, we get these responses from the world. So when a book sells and gets awards, we feel better about that book.
Yeah.
And then when a book is sort of ignored, or, just seems to, the world shrugs with indifference, in a way, and it's sad, but I think in a way we kind of distance ourselves from that book. Well, maybe that book wasn't as good, or but so I try not to get caught up in any of that stuff
Yeah.
and have my relationship to the book be pure. I really love Blood Mountain, um, which is actually coming out in paperback, which I'm glad in April, I think. And I feel like books really only start to live when they're in paperback because that's when a lot of people can afford them and interact with them. It's not just the library sales,
Right.
it's real readers. And I feel like is Barnes and Noble even not carrying middle grade hardcovers anymore because they don't sell? I think
Yeah, you're
that's
right. There are fewer and fewer and fewer every time I go in there. Yeah.
yeah. So I think they just have moved on. So Blood Mountain, I think because it's written in the third person,
Hmm.
and I just feel like it feels like me. It feels like my writing, my mindset. It's fast paced. It's exciting. It sort of threads that needle of the two impulses of the sort of commercial idea of something that's really going to be an entertainment for a reader, and also being quasi literary, with
Yeah.
so those two impulses kind of come together in that book. So I love that one. But there's I could go through. So they are like my children in that I like them all. I don't think everything I've done has been a radical success or anything, but uh, you know, I could go through different books and what I
Right.
like about them.
Different favorites for different reasons, different times, different periods. Yeah.
Six Innings is a baseball book. I had what I thought was a cool idea of following, one game, and I would tell the stories of each kid as the game. I had this idea that the ball itself was the camera. So if someone had caught the ball, then I could tell that
Yeah.
player's story. So I kind of did that a little bit throughout. But at the time, my oldest son, Nicholas, who's 30 years old now in New York City, he was a two-time cancer survivor. And I coached him in Little League, and he had gone through everything. And I decided to make a character in Six Innings. I gave a character cancer. And, there's parts of that book I could not possibly read out loud to a group. I still can get
Right.
choked up. It's amazing how that all just comes so back, so close. Uh,
Yeah.
it hits you right in the heart.
Yeah.
So that book, of course, means a lot for me personally.
Right.
You
Are
know,
there, do you see kind of pieces of yourself or pieces of your life or pieces, I know the golden doodle that we're going to talk about soon is a connection to your actual life, but do you find that there are some sort of pieces or nudges or clues that connect to your actual life?
absolutely. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't think you can write any other way.
Right.
We're all in a bubble.
Yeah.
We're all in our own little bubbles, and that's where inspiration's going to come from. I mean, how you uh, fictionalize those inspirations or those. I sometimes think of like, the diving board and the swimming pool, like your real life is the diving board, all that stuff that's just your immediate surroundings. And then the swimming, when you dive into the water, that's like your imagination, and you're kind of like letting it out into the world, into the fictional world, and it will kind of morph and be itself. But so there's me in all of these books. And Jigsaw Jones is certainly, I'm the dad, and I'm Jigsaw, and I'm the grandpa, and I'm the dog too. I'm everything.
You're
So,
everything.
but yeah, Jigsaw, I kind of recognize myself in a little bit too.
Yeah. So how about, because I mentioned the golden doodle, so kind of thinking more of your newest or newer
Hmm.
Exit 13 series. Can you
Yep.
tell readers a little bit about a background of that especially if they haven't gotten their hands on it yet?
Yeah. Well, Exit 13 is a series idea that I developed with a couple of editors at Scholastic. And together we kind of came up with this concept of Schitt's Creek, the television show, which is, the family's basically trapped in a motel,
Yep.
and Stranger Things, which is another television show, but it's weird and mysterious, and bringing those two elements together.
Yeah.
So we had this idea for Exit 13, where our family, they don't quite realize at first, but they are sort of trapped in a rift in time and are forced to live in this motel that has mysteries and strangeness, and it's kind of cool in the sense that there's a slowly unfolding
Yeah.
mystery that goes on, and this deepening mystery. And the motel itself, I feel like in the second book, becomes a little bit more of a character, if you will. So, but it's brother and sister, Ash and Willow, and they're close in age. Willow's kind of funny. It's fun when and exciting when a character is like, oh, she's funny. Like, I don't know. There's funny things just come out of this character's mouth. And Ash is kind of intense, and he's just very just a very intense kind of kid who's got his own little demons. And they have a dog, and I love dogs. I've had 4 dogs in my life, including a golden doodle. So I, of course, gave them a golden doodle.
Yeah.
And just pretty much strange things start to happen. The thing with a series, there's a lot of ways of doing a series, but when you think of soap operas on television, it's always set in a hospital or a law practice, because you're getting a lot of characters in and out, and you can kind of keep refreshing the cast of characters. And the motel is also kind of a cool setting, because though this family is trapped, and we realize they're trapped by the end of the first book,
Yeah.
other people can come and go. So it was like, if I need a new character, I can just, bring them in. And writing Jigsaw Jones, I enjoyed that too, because he's a mystery, he's a detective. So there's always a new character stepping forward.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps it fresh for you as a writer.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
I think too, I hadn't read very many middle grade books that had some of those paranormal kind of vibes, which was neat, because that was something new for me. I avoid that in my adult reading life, like the crazy mysteries or things I can't understand. Those are, if you were to look at my reading log, there are very few of those. And then the rest is, big family sagas and realistic fiction and whatnot. So I really enjoyed, I could handle reading it as a middle grade novel. And I think a lot of kids will find that new and different and appealing in their own reading lives too.
Yeah, well, thank you. To me, realistic fiction is the core to all of writing, and then once you, not that you, I hate I don't like the word mastery, but like once you become adept at writing realistic fiction, it's not too great of a jump to be, okay, it's not World War II, it's a zombie horde coming over the hills. It's something. So yeah, realistic fiction has always been, where I come continually return to. But yeah, for Exit 13, it was sort of like, hey, let these ideas hang out.
Yeah.
Really nice to not have to do that level of research too, because typically what will happen to me, like with my book Upstander, I knew I wanted to do something with substance use disorder, a very, very serious topic. And then, once you have this idea, then there's the next day where you're like, oh, I'm not smart enough to write this book. I don't know enough. So now I've got to do, I had to go off and find some experts to talk to, and I read a bunch of books and, first person accounts, and it took me a long time to then be able to start writing.
Yeah.
Whereas with Exit 13, I was just making it up,
Yeah.
which was really fun and loose. And I think I'm probably a little bit of an uptight writer. Like, I really need to know what I'm doing, and just very careful and slow. And doing something like Exit 13 was kind of liberating for me, where I could just kind of come up with some ideas and just follow them along. One of the lessons I learned was Stephen King's book on Kennedy assassination. I think it's called like November 23 or something like that. And it's a terrific book, but there's a time travel element in it. And the old me, if I had to do a book with time travel, I'd be like, I'd have to figure out the science behind time travel and how it works and how it's legitimate. What it could, the dad is an astrophysicist and blah, blah, blah. And in King's book, there's a diner, and they open the door in the utility closet, and it's 1963. It's like,
Right.
and and the guy's like, how's that? I don't know. And you go from there, because it doesn't matter.
Right.
What's important is just getting the reader in 1963. You don't have to answer all these questions. And King kind of taught me that lesson. Like, don't get hung up on all that stuff. Sometimes the reader wants to go with you.
Yes.
Why not? It's a wardrobe. They open the wardrobe. They're in another land,
Yeah. We overthink enough things in our actual lives that we just want to go on the ride with you in our reading lives. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. And I think
so I kind of learned to loosen up a little bit. So writing, so everything accumulates. This is what I do believe as a writer, that everything you do, that nothing is wasted, So, if I, writing Jigsaw Jones all those years and learning how mysteries work, allowed me, that fed into Exit 13 in terms of, because there are mysteries and there are questions. It's so important for readers to have questions in their minds that keep them moving forward. And writing scary tales gave me, practice and building suspense and drama and writing those scenes, so that, I felt like a lot of things came together with Exit 13, and a lot of parts of myself.
Yeah.
Including my dog. So.
Which, by the way, I have a golden doodle, and I currently have 4 dogs right now too. So.
Oh. Wow.
Yeah, it's a little chaotic.
Do you have land? Are you able to just kind of let them out, or?
We've got a nice big backyard, and we all rotate, who has walking duty with the big dogs. We have 2 big dogs, golden doodle, labradoodle, 2 miniature Yorkies. So we've got the big and the little, and it's crazy. It's all good. So I definitely could connect with the dog in Exit 13. So there's 2 books out in that series now. And do you know where it will go? Like how far in the future are you seeing?
Well, we're now we're a little bit in the vagaries of publishing and the market and all of that, so we're kind of still talking about where it could go. The thing that's tricky about this series, or starting any series, is that you have to conceive of something that could be an 8 or 10 book series,
right?
And it's got to have like a strong enough foundation that it can support, if you think of a tree, it's that trunk, and that it could support these other branches that could grow off. And yet at the same time, you have to write, you don't control that.
Right.
They could, the bean counters could come in and go, okay, well, that was nice, but we're going to end it here. And, just, we're hoping for more books, and all the information's not out yet. So if your readers all go out and buy more Exit
That's right.
13 books, then there'll certainly be more. I don't know, uh I don't know that I figured it all out. It's been a process. It- with I remember watching the show Lost. Do you remember the show
Yeah.
Lost?
Yep.
That was usually popular. And that first season was killer. It was like so great. And then you got the feeling they got renewed and said, okay,
Now what?
what are we doing? Like you felt like they were kind of trying to figure it out. And there's a polar bear and a smoke monster, and they kind of stuck a few things against the wall, and not everything, resonated. So I feel like there's a little bit of that scrambling.
Yeah.
So
Well, I will put links in the show notes to the books so that the more the listeners buy, the more, odds are that book 3 and 4 and however many can come. Because
yeah, yeah,
they're definitely a book that, I know there's a book for everyone, but I think these books will appeal to kids in a way that I haven't seen other books or series do, because of those really cool elements. And kids don't need the explanation. They don't need the background and the logic like we do. They are just all in for whatever the events are, because they're cool and they're awesome and they're interesting and they're weird and they're, unexpected. And
yeah,
so I think it serves a what, a niche. Is that the word? Niche. It's
yeah. I
caters to that kind of reader.
We talked about popularity and mainstream and this or that, but like with Exit 13, I was really aiming for something that would be fast paced and gripping and suspenseful and creepy. I wanted that, and I
Yeah.
think readers enjoy that. So I do see them, and I've gotten some of that feedback back, when schools get them. They've been in the book fairs.
Yeah.
So, another thing is, series, while we're talking about series. So I have the Scary Tales series, and I was very much influenced by Twilight Zone with that. So whereas Exit 1 is a progressive series, book 1, book 2, but the story moves
Yeah.
forward. With Scary Tales, like Twilight Zone, each episode or book is self-contained and with different characters, different settings. And yet, so Twilight Zone, like it could be the pool player, a pool shark in a smoky bar room, or it could be alien invaders. It could take, like the range of stories is intense, but each one would deliver the Twilight Zone promise of weirdness or this. So with Scary Tales, I sort of was guided by that idea. Each book is totally unique. Characters don't repeat, settings don't repeat, but hopefully there's a little, a consistency in terms of tone or something that connects them all.
Yeah. So it's so interesting to hear you talk about the different books, the different series, because you started saying, you don't like to be in a box and you just kind of
Mhm.
bounce around and do all sorts of things. And that's what you've done in terms of, content, in terms of characters, but also in terms of formats. And I think I want to just put in there the graphic elements that were in Exit 13 too. Those were nice, surprises as you turn the page to give that visual that so many of us look for also.
Yeah, that was really great. And I love that Scholastic supported that idea. It's sort of a hybrid where
Yeah.
instead of having traditional illustrations, it kind of morphs for 3 or 4 pages into, a classic graphic novel type
Yeah.
format. And it was just, it's a little bit of an experiment. And, I'm not totally sure. It's up to the readers how well that works. Books only come alive when readers pick them up, otherwise they're just sort of dead things.
Yeah.
So
Waiting patiently for us to do so.
waiting patiently.
So another thing I wanted to talk about too, because, as we said, you've got a lot of different books, a lot of different writing styles in them, a lot of different things you've explored, which means you've got a lot of insight into the writing process, especially for other people who might want to do this kind of work as well. And I know you've been offering support to other want to be writers in that way also. Can you talk a little bit about that work?
Yeah, well, you know, I went freelance in 1990. I published my first book in 1986. I've, had highs and lows and ups and downs throughout my career. And we had a pandemic and all of that stuff. And there's a time now I don't feel like the industry is like putting its spotlight on me right now. But I have embraced that I'm a survivor. Like here I am. I have 4 books that are written that are coming out in the future. But one of the things that I started to do was to teach an online class for Gotham writers. And so right now I'm teaching a class called Writing Children's Books Level 1 with 14 adult students. We meet on Tuesday nights from 7 to 10 at night. So when we really I always start by just applauding these students who have jobs and families and demands on their time, and yet Tuesday nights they sit there in front of that computer, and every time at the end of class it's like, oh gosh, we're out of time. I wish we had 3.
Right.
My running joke is like, I'm going to lobby for 4-hour classes. And but you know you're a teacher, so it's really been you get so much out of teaching.
Yeah.
And I never expected to um, care about my students as much as I do, because it's ridiculous, like what I get paid if you consider the amount of time and thought and effort I put into it and what I get paid. It's
Right.
just like, what are you doing, Jimmy? This is not efficient at all. But I get inspired and I get moved, and it forces me to stay contemporary and articulate some of the things that I see in books and what I like, what I respect. And we have a workshop format, so I think when you're given the opportunity to respond to someone's work, um, there's this subtle idea that you have an answer, that you have the answer, that you're supposed to say the answer. And I've come to realize that, it's about the collective wisdom in the room. Uh, it's not the sage on stage, it's the guide on the side. It's that. And sometimes not knowing is an okay place to be, and not feel like, okay, now I need to pronounce, something wise about this book. So I saw Jacqueline Woodson speaking the other day at this conference. And she talked about the first time she handed out a manuscript to her friends, or her beta readers, or whatever term people like to use nowadays. She just wants love. She just wants love back and pray. That's all she wants. Like she's like, tell me what you love. And it could be, it's good when it's specific, like this part on page 5 right here. This made me laugh. This is when I really leaned in, and you get that. And then she said, then the next phase of getting responses is she allows people to ask questions. So again, it's not even just the negative, because you don't want just praise. I mean, that's not valuable down the road, but it's valuable for a writer to keep going forward. But then she's like, then ask questions, oh, it could be I was confused here, I was wondering why this happened, anything. So I thought that was an interesting way of responding to work, rather than providing answers. Was kind of providing thoughtful questions. So there's just so much learning that I do, and there's so much talent out there. This what's more vulnerable and inspiring than like an aspirational writer with a dream who's trying to figure it out, and it's so hard and so daunting, and yet it seems so easy. There was a funny meme I saw the other day. It was like, wait, we do it not because it's easy, but because we thought it would be easy. So,
Yep.
uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, I love teaching. And one of my other real takeaways now that I've taught like 5 classes now over 2 or 3 years. And one is that if you wait till you figure it out, you'll never do it. That
Yeah.
no one knows. No one knows how to write a novel. Like
Right.
there's no preparation for writing a novel short of writing a novel.
Writing
Like
the
you
novel.
have to do. So if you wait until you know you've got all your skills honed and you have your idea and your outline's perfect and blah, blah, you'll never write the novel. Like it's that floundering around in the dark is the process.
Yeah.
Not knowing, embracing not knowing, the liberation of not knowing. It's so important.
Yeah.
So I see that there's some types of people who are sort of professional class takers who keep wanting, if I take one more class, if I learn one more thing, then I'll finally have
Right.
permission to write this novel. And I think you just got to go ahead. You just got to do it. It's like getting ski lessons. I
Right.
compare it to that. I'm sort of like, okay, we're on the bunny slope. When you fall down, this is kind of how you get up. This is kind of how you stop.
Right.
Uh, there's the mountain.
Yeah.
Knock
Yeah.
yourself
You
out.
can't
Like
learn without going to the top and finding your way down. Same with writing the book.
yeah. So that's where I'm at as a teacher, and I can support you and kind of push you off on your way, but it's something you do on your own.
Yeah. But I
Yeah.
bet you they appreciate that message, right? Because they're already ready. Putting it off is, just delaying what could be rather than just Nike slogans that fear the fear, do it anyway, just do it. Any
Yeah.
one of the slogans would apply to that as well.
Yeah, and I think a class sometimes can give you a little discipline because there's some accountability. You have
Right.
to produce some work, and you suddenly like, okay, I got to hand something in 2 weeks.
Right.
I better. So I
Yeah.
think that structure can be good, but it's not. I say some smart things here and there. Other students say a lot of smart things, and you hear what you hear. Um, but again, at the end of the day, you're sitting there writing. And I also get authors who've come in, and that's always exciting. So last week we had Beth Ferry. I don't know if you know her,
Yes.
but she
Yes.
stick and stone, and
Yeah.
she has 12 books coming out
Oh my
that are
God.
done. 12 books coming, if you look on her website, she has 12 books coming out. So she's somehow like cracked the code of writing picture books and simplicity, and that just really honing down to the essence. So I'm learning all the time, and it's inspiring to me, and I think it's been probably one of the better things I've done for my own writing
Yeah.
career is teaching.
Yeah. Always said that. I get more out of the process. Well, hopefully the kids get a lot, but I tend to get even more.
Yeah.
You have 4 books on the radar, right?
Yes, you want me to
I
tell you about
I sure do.
it? Yeah, so I love picture books. I've always loved picture books, and I've always struggled to get them published. And I think, it's hard for non-illustrators. I think it's just a little bit tougher than the illustrator when they're,
Yeah.
uh, somebody shows up with an adorable bear. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, we got to do it. Like you can do an adorable bear. Let's make a book.
Right.
He
Right.
goes to sleep. I don't know. He eats some blueberries. Um, when you're a writer, so I've struggled. I've had some successes here and there with picture books, but other times I've kind of thought I should write middle grade that are text that's all me, and that I'm not depending on the illustrator to raise it up to that level.
Right.
So, but that said, I have a picture book I'm really thrilled with called What Dogs Don't Know. And it's kind of funny and has some heart. And it was bought by Harper and comes out in 2025. I don't know who's going to
Oh,
illustrate it yet.
okay.
I was hoping for 2024, but time passes and my editor had a baby. She didn't ask me about it. We didn't discuss it. She just went off and had a baby. So some people still do that. And yeah, so what dogs don't know. So it's like, I think it's, how does it start? Like, dogs don't know a lot of things. And then it's like math. And it just goes through different examples of what they don't know. And then the turn, of course, is, but they do know some things. And
Right.
we kind of, that's where the heart comes in.
Oh,
And
as a
yeah,
dog lover, I know I'll love that one. Okay. I look
yes.
forward to that.
Then I have a what's it called? Two Birds and a Moose. So I love easy to read books, and I wrote two really nice books that I'm very proud of that are both out of print, both sold over 1 million copies. One's called Wake Me in Spring, and the other is called Hiccups for Elephant. I did them in 1994, which is insane. And I never wrote another one. Or I did, and then it just didn't happen, and I went in other directions. So I finally wrote another one, and it's just about a moose, two birds and a moose. So we start one. There's like one bluebird, one red bird, and a moose, and this moose wants to get up high, and it's just funny and light, and light in text, and they actually bought 2 books based on this one manuscript. So the
Awesome.
second book's not totally written yet, but we're developing this moose. And I just saw the illustrator for the first, I got an email 2 days ago saying, and I forget her name, but this is the illustrator we've selected. So you go nervously over to that website and go, okay, all right, this could be good,
Work.
Um, yeah. So I'm excited. It's so exciting to have that come out. And then the other project that it took me a couple of years to write, because there's nothing worse than writing a novel. It takes forever, and I'm so slow, and a number of times I've gone to my editor and said, listen, I can't, I'm going to be late with this. And she always says, that's fine.
Yeah.
They'll put it off a year. So this is a book called Shaken, and it is about a 7th-grade girl who is a soccer player. Soccer is her world. It's her social currency. It's her self-esteem. It's her friendships. It's her dreams, her ambitions. Everything is wrapped up around soccer. So Kurt Vonnegut, in one of his famous tips to writers, said, no matter how sweet and innocent your leading characters, make awful things happen to them in order that they can reveal themselves to the reader. And I think we instinctively know that as writers. I wasn't aware of Vonnegut's quote in the beginning of my career, but so in this book, I gave her a very severe concussion, and she has to, in a second, often it's a second concussion that has bigger effects. So she can't play soccer anymore. That one thing that is everything to her, soccer is life, is taken away. And then she goes through anxiety and stress and panic attacks and all those things that so many young people are dealing with today. So it kind of transcends the soccer part, like soccer's the platform, but then it becomes this one lost girl, Christy Barrett, who's in 7th grade, who's trying to find herself and find how her place in the world. and make mistakes, and she makes some new friends and loses some old friends, and I'm very proud of it. And it took me a long time to write. I think the pandemic was just weird for a
Definitely.
lot of people and for a lot of writers, and I just had a hard time getting my, I took a lot of digesting and thinking. I do a lot of pre-thinking, and I've come to be gentle with myself, but not beat myself up as much, like why don't you work harder? What's wrong with you, Jimmy? And then I go, oh, I have more than 80 books. I
Just a
do.
few under
I
your
must.
belt.
I must get some work done somewhere along the line. But there's a lot of thinking in advance, and kind of playing it out as I'm walking my dog and doing all that. So I'm excited about that book. But again, I think that the the climate in publishing, it's so hard right now.
Yeah.
What's going to happen to this book? I have no idea. Is it even going to get reviewed? Like, is anyone going to care? I'm at the point of like, I really thank you.
Oh,
Thank you,
my
Steph.
hand raised.
Yes,
Sounds beautiful.
it is. And you know what's interesting? What I did with that book, and is I had there's therapy sessions. Actually, there's something like 8 different therapy sessions that are kind of a common thread that run through the book. And I wondered if I could pull that off, or how to do that. And and I found somewhere along the line, I got interested in art therapy, and I found 3 art therapists, which I only had a very vague understanding of. And I, found some great people who really gave me a lot of time and read my manuscript. But even before there was a manuscript, they would talk to me and answer my questions. And I thought it was just sort of cool. So I don't know that, I mean, there's probably someone else in a middle grade book has had art therapy in there. Maybe, but I know that
I
I do.
haven't read it yet. I
Yeah,
haven't read one, and
it's
I
kind of
love
cool.
that. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
done so much research, lately, especially on the power of arts and creativity and mental health and wellness. So that is a really unique thing that I haven't seen in a kid's book. So that is exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. And yeah, I don't know, again, I don't know what the reaction will be. You just make it up and put it out. I'm fortunate. I'm very, very fortunate and very lucky that I'm able to put things out into the world. Still, people seem still willing to publish me, and there's some people out there still willing to read it. But I don't, I have no idea what the reaction will be. I do think that sometimes we look at, it's hard not to look at this industry as being really trendy and really superficial, and really the flavor of the month kind of thing. And there's just a time of feeling like what so many of us feel like is just sort of an outsider. And there's this little celebration going on with 6 or 7 authors that everyone has to read. And then the rest of us are like, hello, I'm out here. But and I think making any of those complaints only makes you sound uh unsympathetic, and no one really wants to hear that. But it is, I think I only say it because I think it's relatable, in the sense that I think we all want to be seen and want that attention. And it's hard when you go, why is everyone listening to Taylor Swift's album when there's this great folk
That's
singer down the
right.
block who's also great,
Yeah,
not taking
yeah,
nothing away from Taylor Swift. But why in America does, the top of the pyramid sucks up all the attention,
yeah,
and all this other good work is ignored?
yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, that one, out of all of them, sound wonderful, but Shaken, definitely that one's right up my alley. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna send some good energy into that world.
Fall 2024.
I was just
And
gonna ask. Okay.
fall 2024, there's also like a little, I didn't expect this at all, but I ended up dedicating it to a childhood friend, my friend Jimbo, and he was a wild man, and he, he was just a live wire and a smart kid. And Christy meets him. So Christy's pretty much homebound and not going to school, so she's got a special arrangement. And she sees him one night sneaking out of his bedroom window from the second floor and going off into the night. And he comes to represent for me, that sort of, Christy was a very scheduled, very rigid life, and he was sort of like that freedom. And he's a good kid, but he's off having these nighttime adventures and exploring, and in a way, kind of represented like the 70s, or like the way it used to be when kids were out in the wild doing things. And Christy is intrigued, and kind of wants to follow him into the dark and see what's going on. Just step into a new world with him. So there's a great kind of a pivotal scene at the end where they sneak out together, and it's innocent. It's not, they don't have there's not a sexual relationship, or they're not boyfriend or girlfriend. They're just friends, which I really like.
Yes.
I would say that to my own kids. It's like, sometimes they go to middle school and suddenly there's all this talk about, oh, who's your boyfriend, it's like, you just be friends,
Yeah.
with the girls, and
Yeah.
just get to know them and get to hang out with them. Girls are great. Like,
Yeah.
you don't have to do
Yep.
that. Like, you
Caught
don't have
up
to
in
be
all the middle school
worried to
drama.
couple off. Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm excited for that one. Okay. Fall
Thank you.
2024. So
Thank you.
where can people find you to find all the books and keep track of some of the newer books coming out too?
Gosh. Well, I'm going to be at the Rochester Children's Book Festival in November. That's at one of the really, really sweet book festivals. So I do those in Chappaqua and Warwick. I have my blog, jamespreller.com, which I'm kind of posting once a week or twice a week, and at different times. I have big thoughts and share them, and a lot of times it's just like little news. And yeah, I guess you have to look for me to to find me, and certainly the libraries and Amazon. Books go in and out of print nowadays.
Right.
Uh, there's books. One of the things I've learned recently is that there's called like out of stock, which isn't out of print,
Yes.
but it's the same thing in reality. You still can't
Right.
get the book. But my publisher go, oh, no, that's not out of print. It's just out of stock. It's like, so
Right.
they haven't found, the desire to print 2,000 more, so they're in stock. So then
Where does
what's
that?
this status of?
Yeah.
Because when the book's out of print for 5 or 7 years or whatever it is, then the rights can revert back to the author. So if it's out of stock, it's still in print, and it's complicated.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I do school visits, and that's a big thing for me. And I love doing school visits, and I've done them, for more than 20 years. And we have to have that conversation early on, because schools will often sell books so that I, will sign them for the readers there. And like, okay, what's available, what's not available. We have to kind of look into that, and it's new all the time. It's constantly changing.
And you sign their books in their choice of marker color.
Yeah. Well, I learned that from, did I tell you that I learned that from Rebecca Stead? I was at a book festival, and there I was. It's kind of cool who you just sit next to these random people. And it was Rebecca, who I have the highest regard for. And she so as a kid came up and said, "Oh, I'd love to sign my book," and she had an array of like 12 different colored markers, and she said, "Which color would you like?" And
Yes.
they, the way kids can be, I
Yep.
don't, the false, they start to reach for one, the blue, and I don't know, and then they, triumphantly pick the purple. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to steal that idea
I
from
loved it.
Rebecca.
I loved
Yeah.
it. I'm pretty sure you signed my book in purple too. I think I chose that. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
great. Oh, well, thank you so much. I have had such a good time just chatting about your books, the first books, the newest books, the writing process too. I'm always fascinated by the ins and outs of how it works and how a book comes to be and all the ideas until it gets into my hands. So
And
thank
it's different. It's a different for everybody. It is different for everybody. There's no right way or one way. And people ask about art notes and picture books and how do I do this and how do you set it up? What's the right way to do it? And it's like, hey, we're all kind of making it up. And the thing that happens that I have now, having been in the book, been in this business for so long, is that I know I can land the plane. When you're up there in the middle of a book going, oh my God, where am I? What's happening? And you have that doubt. You're not sure where it's going or if it's even a book yet. But I do have that inner knowledge based on an experience that I know I can land the plane eventually. It may take a while. I may have to circle for a while. And I think when you're a new writer, you don't necessarily know that you know how to land the plane.
right,
And but what courage to be up there in the sky not knowing how
right,
you're going to get down.
doing it
So,
anyway.
my
Well,
heart is so much with that beginning aspirational writer and that debut writer who's just starting out. So I really try to give back. Yesterday, and I'm sorry to keep going on, but
oh, I love it.
it was I did a podcast with a 24-year-old young man from Canada wrote to me, and he does a nostalgia, nostalgia. I just want to stab myself in the eye right now. But he does a nostalgia podcast, and he remembered reading Jigsaw Jones
Oh
as a little
gosh.
kid and what those books meant to him. And listen, there's no analytical way that this is a good hour for me to spend in terms of what I'm going to get back I don't know. I didn't check his audience numbers. I don't care. I didn't check your audience numbers.
Right.
uh, I just don't operate that way. But with him, I just felt like here's a young creative kid moving forward, being making something in the world and using his time this way. And he invited me, and I'm honored. And I just want to, I don't want to overstate it. Like, I don't want to pat myself in the back in terms of giving back, but I do want to support him and be there. And I want to support you and be there for you. And I respect what you're doing and where your heart's at. And and it's fun. It's just a lovely way to spend an hour with
It is
Stephanie.
so much fun. It is so much fun. It's like I pinch myself and say, I just got to talk to this person for an hour and
Yeah.
keep doing it every week with someone new and get a new book to add to my.
Who else are you getting? Who else have you got?
So I've had kind of thinking of where we are in the lineup. So Padma, Venture,
Oh, yes.
I, I always
Behind the
think of that.
bars, born behind
Yes,
bars.
born behind bars. Anne Braden has been on. I've got you. I've got a couple in the works, a little sneak peek. Ellie Schwartz is coming in a couple of weeks. So just I've been having the time of my life just
Are
talk.
you middle grade? Is that your focus is middle grade?
It is just children's literature, but so far the primarily I've talked with middle grade authors. I do have some picture book authors coming up. But that's kind of where the podcast has landed so far. And it's fun. It's fun.
Well,
Yeah.
let me know. We can email, but I know a lot of people. So if I can
Yeah.
help connect you, because I would be happy to steer anyone toward you,
Yeah,
because I know you take good care of them.
I would.
I
Thank
know
you.
you would. I know
Thank you
you would.
for,
No, but really, I know a lot of people, so I could maybe help you there.
I would love it. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. I'm so appreciative. This was so much fun.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you and it's been a nice way to spend time, and on to the rest of the day.
That's right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Kid Lit Love podcast. You'll find links to all the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes at alitlife.com. And if you want more, you might like to listen to my other podcast called Get Literate. It's a podcast that explores all things books and reading, notebooks and writing, and everything in between to build a life you love. One more thing. If you love what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a bookish friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish community of kid lit love. Thanks for listening.